Alright everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's been a while, and if you haven't been paying attention, there is a new game in town called Hedron within the HEX ecosystem, so I think it's worth talking about because it's really early still. But if you want to take advantage of things in crypto, sometimes you have to be early, and sometimes you have to educate yourself before everybody else piles in. So there's this new coin called Hedron. Again, you've probably heard of it, and it's been having some nice pumpy action going on, lately, so it's definitely pumping. But as with everything in crypto, don't just buy it because it pumps, right? We're going to talk about what it actually is and whether or not it's actually good for HEX or bad for HEX. Is Hedron going to ruin all of HEX? Is Hedron legit? Well guys, as with everything in crypto, the answer often lies somewhere in the middle. You know how much I hate that binary yes or no thinking, so the answer is Hedron's probably neither good nor bad. I do believe it is legit, as in the founder believes in it, it has good intentions behind it, it was not intended to be a scam. But stick around because we're going to talk about the price potential of Hedron and also the price potential of HEX and how they interact with each other and how they both affect the buy and sell pressure of one another in this dual token ecosystem. And this right here, guys, if you haven't seen this already, this is an image of an encapsulated HEX stake, which you could also find on popular NFT platforms like OpenSea. So that's a pretty cool dynamic that we're going to talk about at the end, right? But first of all, we got to lay out the groundwork, guys. Let's just remind everybody here what really makes number go up in crypto. What do we care about when it comes to the price and when it comes about making money? I need to remind you guys, it's just buying and selling. That's all that makes the price go up and down. That's it. People like to overcomplicate it. That's really it. Along with, obviously liquidity and driving the demand. But at the end of the day, it's people clicking the buy button and people clicking the sell button. Okay? Buying makes the price go up. Selling makes the price go down. I know that might seem obvious, but we need to just lay the groundwork here for the mental framework. Now, we need to ask ourselves, how does Hedron affect, HEX buy pressure, HEX sell pressure, and also Hedron buy pressure and Hedron sell pressure? How do these two things play off of one another, and how could they affect each other's prices? And most importantly, are they going to go to the moon or are they going to dump? What's going to go on? Well, guys, like I've been saying, there's basically a new game in town. It's almost like a derivative product built on top of HEX or around the HEX ecosystem. And long story short, what you can do with Hedron, if you don't already know, check out hedron.pro and actually read the website. Link in the description below. Read everything so you understand what it really does. Long story short, you can claim it or mint it for free if you have an existing HEX stake. You can also encapsulate a stake and then take out a loan on that stake. That loan would be an HDRN token, which you would then have to pay back in more HDRN. Or you can go trade that stake, which is encapsulated, on any popular NFT marketplace. So there's a new game in town, guys, and the question we all got to be asking is, will the attention on Hedron outweigh the attention on the HEX ecosystem? But is that even the right question? I mean, is it one sucking attention from the other, or is it a symbiotic relationship where it's a mutual benefit for both? So the alternative question or way you could look at this is, will Hedron actually add more attention to the HEX ecosystem that wouldn't otherwise be there? So you need to understand that Hedron requires HEX. Okay, it couldn't exist if HEX didn't exist. And that's because every single Hedron that will ever exist must come from a HEX stake. You cannot have it any other way. You can't mint a Hedron if you don't first have a HEX stake. And the very simple formula for claiming and minting is you take the amount of B shares in your stake and multiply that by the number of days served. That'll give you how much Hedron you're allowed. But in order to mint Hedron, right, you need to have HEX and you need to stake HEX. Therefore, you have to buy and stake HEX. Therefore, number go up in HEX, because in order to get Hedron, you need to have staking on HEX. Okay, so theoretically, it's a very simple answer, which is yes, this will attract more attention to HEX, and it'll attract more stakers because there's another game in town, and number will go up. But there's obviously some complications, and it's not that simple. So another pro of Hedron, I'm going to go over the good things about Hedron first before I get to the potentially bad things later on. This is a new way for people to take profits, and this is especially true for people like HEX whales, for example. So now you have this new coin where if the price of Hedron pumps, people can take profits in Hedron instead of selling their HEX. They can basically sell their HDRN token instead of selling their HEX. And again, this is especially true for the HEX whales that everybody loves to hate on and blame for when the price goes down, right? So this theoretically reduces sell pressure on HEX because, now people have an alternative token to dump. But it adds a lot of sell pressure for Hedron. And there's some big players in HEX that can mint a lot of Hedron. The OA has actually been proven to have claimed Hedron. The God Whale has also claimed some Hedron. And a lot of HEX whales out there have verifiably on the blockchain claimed and minted Hedron. And any one of these guys, any one of these players theoretically could dump all their Hedron at any given moment. Now, is this something to be scared about? Well, HEX went up 10,000x, and there is a ton of big players that haven't dumped the price to zero that probably could, right? So I don't think it's as big of a fear as people might think, but just be warned that there are a lot of new whales in Hedron that may not value their Hedron as much as they value their HEX, especially in the early days when it's still kind of new. Speaking of new, there's the novelty factor that I don't see a lot of people talking about. Okay, this is the new coin effect, otherwise known as shiny object syndrome, which may make both HEX and Hedron pump. See, there's a lot of reinvigorated attention just because of the fact that there's a new game in town. There's a new shiny object that people want to go in and figure out. And so with this added layer of complexity and this added layer of game theory, well, us crypto nerds love complexity, right? So a lot of us are going to go check this out. And there's going to be a lot of newfound attention on the HEX ecosystem. So the novelty factor theoretically brings in more stakers simply because 2 coins are better than 1 and more coins good, right? I'm just running you through the base psychology of how the masses may act, okay? This is very, very simple to understand, but a lot of people aren't talking about that. There's also less perceived risk for max length HEX stakes. What does that mean? It means you really don't have as much of a cost to carry a HEX stake for 15 years anymore if you have the option to encapsulate it and then sell it on a derivative market, or we could call it a bond market. Now, if we have more max length stakes, this actually decreases sell pressure on HEX, right? Because there's a whole bunch of new stakers that are just launching their stakes way out 15 years from now. And in turn, they're actually increasing the average weighted stake length, which is one of the primary pumpamentals in the HEX ecosystem. And allegedly, we've already seen this happen. Now, I don't have any verifiable proof of this happening from Hedron alone, but I do know that in recent history, the average weighted stake length went from 6.1 years to 6.3 years. And now I'm unsure if this is the Hedron effect, right? But people are claiming that it is. I don't have any proof of that. It's just speculation, but it does make sense, right? People now have more options when it comes to staking. So maybe if they were afraid to previously make a 15-year stake because they were afraid of that commitment, well, maybe now they're not so afraid because they can sleep better at night knowing that at some point in the future, whether that's 2 years or 7 years from now or whatever, they potentially have an option to offload their stake to somebody else and still get some value out of it. Now, will they get as much value as they would have by holding the stake all the way through? Probably not. Me personally, I don't really have any interest in wrapping my stakes, taking out loans on my stakes, or trading my stakes right now. Any stake that I make in HEX personally, I fully commit to and I fully intend to see it through to completion. I should warn all you guys that this is still very new and experimental software, so everybody encapsulating their stakes right now, congrats to you. You guys are the pioneers of this new technology, but understand that there is a lot of risk in doing so. Now, what are some built-in Hedron pumpamentals, you could say? Well, there's some dynamics that the founder Alex built into the contract, which I think are pretty cool. See, inflation will reduce dramatically over time. So in the beginning, you have this kind of big bang explosion of all this new Hedron being minted into existence because you've got all the pre-existing HEX stakers, we'll call them legacy stakers, and they all have this bonus phase where they're actually getting 10x, or I think today, I think it's 8x, the Hedron that they would get from all their B shares times their days served. So you've got all these people rushing in to mint their new Hedron token, and you've got the supply inflating very drastically. But over time, coins are burned. How are coins burned? Well, as people take out loans in Hedron and they pay back the loans, that Hedron effectively gets burned and taken out of the ecosystem. Or when people use Hedron to buy defaulted stakes, so in the Hedron ecosystem, you can take out a loan, but if you default on that loan, somebody else can buy your stake from you using Hedron. That Hedron then also gets sent to a burn pool. So these are 2 different routes of which Hedron gets burnt. But now Hedron can inflate every single day because people can mint new Hedron every single day at the same time. So in theory, this trends towards Hedron being more scarce over time. So you've got the creation of Hedron based off of new loans and daily minting. But then you've got the decreasing supply of Hedron based off of loan payoffs and defaulted on loans. So if at any point the loan payoffs plus defaults becomes greater than the new loans plus daily minting, theoretically you would have more coin scarcity over time. I think the coin is pretty obviously going to inflate for a long time, but it will probably reach some asymptote of total supply. You can maybe think of this similar to HEX or Bitcoin's inflationary schedule, right? It does taper off over time. And in theory, the price of Hedron, this is according to the founder, in theory, the price will be some constant times the price of a B share, meaning the price of a Hedron token may one day track the price of a B share. That doesn't mean it's going to be the same price in USD as the price of a B share, but it could mean that it goes up and down in relative terms compared to the price of a B share. And now because shares always go up in HEX terms, they trend towards always going up in USD terms as well. Not a guarantee, but we've seen it happen. The price of shares in the HEX system has gone up dramatically, even more so than than the price of HEX, which has also gone up a crap ton. So because shares always go up in HEX, and because theoretically the price of Hedron tracks the price of a B share, this should mean that the price of Hedron will also trend up. Now again, we have to sit back and wait and see how this all pans out, but it does sound good in theory, right? Now some stuff I haven't heard people talk about. This is really the gateway drug for altcoiners, let's call them, and NFT users as well, which to me there's not much difference. I'm sorry guys, I'm sorry all you NFT bros and altcoiners out there, but I know that a lot of people, I know how people act, okay? And if there's a new coin in town, this is going to give a lot of people an introduction into what HEX is. They're going to see Hedron, which is pumping like crazy right now. Guys, when coins pump, people pay attention. That's just a psychological fact. Everybody wants to rush in and see, why did this new coin pump? Should I buy it? Should I not buy it? It's going to attract a lot of new users, especially when it's pumping in a bear market, right? And a lot of people are losing a lot of money left and right on this coin or that coin. Well, if there's one diamond in the rough that seems to be going up, you better believe a lot of people are going to check that out. And NFT users as well, they're going to start seeing HEX encapsulated stakes on OpenSea. You can already see them on OpenSea right here. These are a bunch of people selling their wrapped HEX stakes. Now, not a whole lot of buying and trading activity going on yet, but this brings in buckets of people from different pockets of the cryptocurrency ecosystem as a whole. So new pockets of users are seeing HEX on OpenSea, and also people that might feel like they missed the boat, which is obviously an incorrect way to think. But if people do feel like that, maybe they'll start to accumulate Hedron, and maybe they'll think that they got a second chance, essentially, at becoming a Hedron whale. And especially because unit bias is in their favor, you know, it's pretty easy to afford 1 million or even 1 billion Hedron at this point in time. Some people might choose to play this game and say, well, if I can't be a HEX whale, I want to be a Hedron whale. But in the process, you know, some percentage of those people that get into Hedron will also get sucked into HEX, because you really can't have one without the other, right? Another thing I like that Hedron is doing is they're changing the language to value the B share more than the T share. Now this is really good for HEX, okay? People aren't talking about this at all. This is great for HEX because T shares are too exclusive. I really do not like using the word T share anymore, and I hear it used way too repetitively by a lot of influencers out there. People don't realize that they're becoming too expensive, okay? A lot of the average Joe users can't afford a T share these days. Now, we should really just be talking about shares in general, but it is good that as the price of shares go up, we do change the abbreviation to talk about, you know, B shares as opposed to T shares. You know, a T share today costs roughly $2,400, right? Whereas if you were just to divide that by 1,000, you know, a B share is only $2.4. So we're fixing the unit bias kind of as we go along here, if that makes sense. All right, so what are the cons of Hedron, right? What are the bad parts? I just talked about a bunch of cool, potentially good stuff that would pump the price of HEX. What could go wrong? Okay, the cons are that theoretically, and I don't think this is likely, guys, but theoretically encapsulated stakes and this new game in town could theoretically reduce buy and sell pressure for HEX due to people only wanting to play the new game. Now, reducing sell pressure is good. Reducing buy pressure is not good. But this is only in an instance where people get so sucked into the Hedron ecosystem that they completely forget about HEX, right? They don't care about HEX anymore. They just want to play with Hedron. I don't think this is likely just because of the way that they're so interconnected. I think it's nearly impossible for this outcome or this scenario to happen, but you never know. And my prediction is that there will not be a whole lot of stake buyers, right, for a couple of 100 days at least, because these stakes that are freshly minted, that haven't had any days served, they're not really that valuable compared to somebody who could just go make a stake, you know, 10 days later. And what are you really buying in the first 10 days? You're not buying that much opportunity cost in the early days. So I don't think, even though you see a lot of people trying to sell their newly encapsulated HEX stakes on OpenSea, I don't think there's really going to be too many buyers for them. And I don't predict that this market will become very active until a couple of years down the road. Now, Hedron sell pressure. I mentioned this earlier, right? But there's a couple of different ways that Hedron could potentially dump, right? Loans themselves could cause sell pressure of Hedron because loans are a way for people to get exit liquidity. So think about the liquid loans system, for example. People want to take profits without selling their pulse chain, but they're able to take out a loan in a stable coin, which is equal to $1, which is more useful than a token that has a volatile price. So because in Hedron, you're taking out a loan in a volatile coin called Hedron, a lot of people might just dump that Hedron for stables right away if they're using the Hedron loan to get exit liquidity to go be placed elsewhere in the system. So basically, in other words, a lot of people that have taken loans might choose to dump their Hedron for stables, okay? There's also the constant daily Hedron sell pressure because you can mint Hedron tokens daily. Now, this is great for degens, right? As they love this concept as daily divs, right? I think this is a terrible, toxic concept because you have people checking every single day like rats and just wasting their time away. Well, that could be better served elsewhere, but there are a whole lot of degens out there that are constantly seeking their daily divs, right? So this could add in a daily payout component to your HEX stake because every day you can mint new Hedron tokens. Some people might try to do this every single day. But with all this daily minting, if people are constantly dumping Hedron, this could create consistent sell pressure for the price of Hedron. Not for the price of HEX, but for the price of Hedron. So the alternative to that, the silver lining here is that this actually probably creates a lot of new HEX stakers because the degens that don't want to hold for even 6 months, let alone 1, 5, 10 years, they get this new degen game. They get a new side game to go make HEX more interesting for them. So a lot of us long-term thinkers in the HEX ecosystem forget that there's a lot of people that don't understand that long-term thinking is the only thing that wins in crypto. So Hedron might get some of those short-term thinkers, those short-term daily dividend type of people, and we may be able to convert some of those people into a more long-term mindset. Now, of course, I have to mention, guys, there's inherent smart contract risk to everything here. This is all very new and it could get exploited at any time. And at any moment, people could lose a lot of money very quick. However, that said, claiming and minting seems low risk, judging by the fact that so many whales have done it. The origin address has done it. The God Whale has done it. The audits came back great. The code seems okay. I can't really read code that well, so take that for what it's worth. But the founder also backs it 100%. Of course he does, right? But I interviewed the founder. I read the audits and the code. I want to trust the founder really bad. I really do want to trust Alex. He seems like he has the best intentions. But I have to admit that I don't know what I don't know, right? So use Hedron at your own risk. It's all still very new and experimental. If you choose to use Hedron, you accept the risk and you accept any money that you may lose with this new system. Therefore, guys, in that long ramble, what do you think? Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. I kind of am leaning towards the position that the pros in Hedron outweigh the cons. I think it's going to be good for HEX. I think number go up for both. Let's pump Hedron and HEX to the moon, of course. It's more game theory. It's another layer on top of HEX. It makes HEX more sticky, and speculative stickiness is really one of the main things that gives crypto value. As we know, the use case of crypto is primarily speculation and store of value, and that's okay. And I think Hedron adds more of that. But as always, guys, make sure to like and subscribe, share the video, and leave a comment below letting me know what you think about this crazy new concept called Hedron.